All right. Thank you, everybody, for waiting. We should be live by now. If anyone is here, please feel free to put some comments. Say hi. Um, Hi, Nicholas, and hi, Harith. And then
Yep.
we'll know we can start.
Right.
It,
How's
uh,
everyone?
right. In the meantime, just for a quick sort of introduction to this session, um, this session is done by Nicholas Chin from Etherscan, and he will walk us through how to use Etherscan APIs, um, following from the earlier session on how to get an introduction to Solidity and smart contract programming. Okay, I will let me see, add Nicholas's stream.
Oops. I think.
All right,
Oh,
Nicholas,
my
you'll
screen
need
is sharing
to,
now.
yeah. Okay, cool. So I think we should be good for Nicholas to start. Um, oh, I see some comments now. Hi, Alpha. Um, as a reminder, we similar to the previous session, Nicholas will go through how to use Etherscan APIs, and at the end of it, we will go through the questions that you guys have. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments, and we will bring it up afterwards. All right.
Yes.
We'll get Nicholas to start sharing.
All right. Great. So just hoping everyone can see my screen. Let me know if you can't. Right. So everyone, how are you doing? We're all having a great afternoon here in KL. So starting off with Etherscan. Etherscan is a block explorer that we all know and love. It's very helpful. It helps us find lots of useful information, and it's very important to the Ethereum ecosystem. So you can use it for the simplest things like checking your transactions, all the way to some people who can do an entire forensic chain on the biggest DeFi hacks out there. So since this is a more of a developer-focused week, I thought we'd go more on the Etherscan APIs, which some of you know exists and some of you might not have heard of. Okay, so moving on, I think a great way to get started with the docs is to check out our documentation. So let me just switch my screen over. Okay, so I hope everyone can see our newest API documentation. We just rewrote this about a month back, and this is in Gitbook, so it's I think it's much more cleaner than our previous documentation. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar with Gitbook, on the left side here, I hope you can see my screen, my cursor. So on the left side here, we have some great groupings of how the documentation is separated. So I'm just going to start with the getting started section. So this is great if you have never heard of Etherscan, you've never used an API key, and you're not too sure on how to get one of these API keys. So there's some great resources here on how to do that, how to register an account, how you would go about creating an API key, and some of the key endpoint URLs. So just a quick note is that an API key that you create on Etherscan, you can use it across all the other testnet explorers, such as Goerli, Rinkaby, Kovan, and all that. They work the same, just that you cannot use it on a different blockchain. So you can't use an Etherscan API key on BSC Scan. Okay, so what I'd really like to cover in this session is this API endpoints section. So more of what it does, why do we group it in these different sections, and what do each of these different sections do? So starting with the accounts. So the account section has everything to do with an Ethereum account, or if you prefer to call it an Ethereum address. Yeah, I think that's better to describe it, an Ethereum address. So some of the endpoints we have under the account section is get Ether balance, which allows you to query your Ethereum address for how much Ether you have left. And before I go on to check out all the other endpoints, I'd just like to show you guys how one of these so-called tab works. So at the top here, you have the endpoint's name, what it does, and the sample URL. So this sample query, you can copy it and paste it into a browser. Where is my... Here it is. You can paste it into any browser that you have, and it will return you some results. So you don't need to set up any extra things. You can try all these endpoints right in your browser. So of course, this is not the most beautiful way of looking at the response, which is in JSON. You can copy it and go to sites like JSON formatter and look at it. Oops, it's the wrong. Oh no. JSON. Oh, why is it triggering that? Just give me a second. All right. JSON formatter. So our APIs return data in JSON format. Way by what we call, either you can use sites like this, or if you're doing programming, you can use the parse method of your own language. Okay, so back to the docs right over here. You'll see that we have other endpoints for the account section, such as getting ether balance for multiple addresses. So you can query a whole list of addresses from a single call. Get a list of normal transactions. And what we mean by normal transactions here is transactions that involve native ether. So not your tokens such as USDT, what other tokens you have, Uni, SHIB, and all those other meme coins that you like. So get a list of normal addresses is for those that involve transactions of native ether, such as transferring it to another address. Next, internal transactions. So internal transactions are transactions that are performed by other contracts. So for example, when two contracts interact, they produce what is called an internal transaction. And you can look them up using Etherscan. And next, these are the same internal transactions, just that you're using a transaction hash to query for them, or by a block range. And next, we have get a list of ERC20 token transfers. So this is the endpoint that you should use if you were to query transactions from tokens such as WETH, USDT, what other tokens, Uni, USDC. So a common mistake is using this ERC20 token transfer endpoints, or rather the other way around, actually. People use the get a list of normal transactions for WETH, but WETH is in fact an ERC20 token. So you should be using this endpoint instead. Okay, next, ERC721, NFTs. So you can get a list of all the ERC721 transfers from an address by using one of these. So a good thing is that we have a lot of filters. So you can go down to filtering from an address, such as your normal Ethereum address. You can go down to filtering it from a contract address, such as CryptoPunks, CryptoKitties, Penguins. I'm losing track of all the NFTs out there. And of course, you can do a transfer by both the address and the contract address. So meaning that you want to create your account specifically for CryptoPunks or specifically for Penguins, whatever they're called. And finally, get a list of blocks mined by an address. So if you're a miner, you can check how many blocks you've mined from your address. Next, you have get historical ether balance. So if you like to know your balance, let's say you wanted to know how much ether you had a year ago, you could find a timestamp and query what was your ether balance at that time. This is helpful, let's say, in the future when crypto is taxed locally and someone asks you, like, how much ether do you have in the past? You have no idea, so you can check. You can use this endpoint to check for those things. Okay, that covers it for the accounts section. Let's move on to contracts. So contracts has some things that was covered by Dave earlier on. And the first thing that you can do is you can get the contract ABI, or stands for, oops, didn't mean to click. But yeah, here is some endpoints we have for contracts is you'll be able to get the contract ABI for verified contract source codes. So most of these endpoints, such as contract ABI and get contract source code, they only work on contracts that have been verified. So there is a page on Etherscan that shows you all the verified contracts. And you can essentially use the API to get this list of verified contracts that the users have submitted to Etherscan. And if you want it as a CSV, it's possible too. Okay, next, this is verify source code, something very, very important so that we can see. So a verified contract on Etherscan, as you may have seen, has this check mark, and you will be able to perform cool things like read contract and write contract. So if you're a dev and you have a lot of contracts to submit, you can do it one by one, but of course, a more productive way would be to use the API to do so. And there's quite a bit of code here. So not everyone might understand this, but we have a tutorial on that actually at the bottom on how exactly to implement all this. And next you have verify proxy contract. So for this is for contracts that you've done which are upgradable, and they have a separate endpoint. They are not the same together. Okay, so that is for the contracts endpoint. Next, moving on to transactions. Okay, so for transactions, we have two here. The first is checking a contract execution status. So what we're referring to a contract execution status is, let me go to Etherscan and show you an example. View transactions. Let's take one that failed. Let's see. Okay, so what we're referring to contract execution status is this part down here, where it says contract execution reverted. So you'll be able to query a transaction using its hash, which is this, and you'll be able to pass it into the endpoint to be able to know why a contract failed. Or if it passed, it will not show an error. And of course, next, you can check for your transactions receipt status. So for transactions that have, let me go back. So for transactions that have executed successfully, you would get a message of 0. And if they fail, you would get, wait, is that right? Yes. So 0 for failed and 1 for successful transactions. So you can use this, for example, if you're using bots to do a ton of transactions and you're not sure if all these transaction hashes went through, if any of them failed, you can pass in a list of them to this endpoint to check for it. Okay, so after contracts, transactions, sorry. After that is blocks. So blocks, you have endpoints such as block and uncle rewards. So that is essentially for every block mined on the Ethereum blockchain, as we all know, it produces a 2 Ether block reward and uncle rewards where necessary. So you can query them by this block number and passing it to the endpoint to find out how much the rewards was given to the miner for mining this block. Okay, next is the block countdown. Yes, so for very important events such as, let's say, the London upgrade, and all future upgrades in the future, you can use this endpoint to know how many seconds are left towards this block time. Okay, next, we also have get block number by timestamp. So as I mentioned in the previous endpoint, you would, in the account section actually. So if you want your historical Ether balance, you need to query that by a block number. So you don't exactly know what block was it, let's say a year ago. So this endpoint will help. You can pass in a timestamp. This is in Unix timestamp, by the way, which looks like, think of an example. Yes. So Unix timestamp is a computer way of defining time. So instead of saying January 1st, you would say this big number. So you can pass in that relevant time into this endpoint to find out what block was mined at that specific time. So using that block number, you can use it to pass it into things like historical balance to know your previous balance in the past. Okay, next is get daily average block size. So this is how big the Ethereum blocks are getting. So if you're interested into that kind of things, we do have an endpoint for that. And next, daily block count and rewards. So you might want to know for analytics purposes, like how many blocks are mined per day and how much were they rewarded for each one of these blocks. This endpoint will be helpful to you. Get daily block rewards, similar thing. And this is how many blocks was distributed to the miners every day within a 24-hour period. And next, get daily average time for a block to be included. So this is a good metric on how congested the Ethereum blockchain is. So it measures how long it, on average, for your block to get included in the Ethereum chain. Next, the Uncle block count rewards, similar as blocks, but just that this is for Uncle blocks. And that is it for the block section. Moving on to logs. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with the Ethereum node JSON RPC methods, you will know that there is an endpoint called ethlogs. So ethlogs it measures the event logs that are emitted by a contract address when it's done doing something. So this logs endpoint will allow you to retrieve it using from each block or from top by topics. So it allows you to go very, very, very detailed to what sort of logs you want to see, let's say from a certain block to the next block, or from an address and using much more of that. So we are definitely looking to write a better tutorial on this, because logs is a topic that is quite complicated to some, and we're definitely looking to help make the process understanding that better. Okay, next is the get parity proxy endpoints. So the get parity proxies, get and parity actually, for those of you who are not familiar, they are the names of Ethereum nodes or Ethereum clients, let's say. So these proxies are essentially, they allow you to query a node, an Ethereum node, without having you to set up a node, maintain a node, and interact to it through the JSON RPC interface. Instead, you can do that over HTTP. So you can essentially copy one of these, and let's say let's get the block number, and go over to browser, paste it, and we'll see the block number, which is currently in hex. So yeah, unfortunately, all the results returned by get parity proxies are in hex. So you will have to convert this into a normal integer if you would like to see it that way. So we support most of the, I think about 80% of the most commonly used JSON RPC methods. So there are stuff like get block by number, get uncle by block number index. So these are direct responses from nodes. They are not filtered in any way, and it would be the same if you were to run a node and query them. Get transaction by hash, get transaction by block number index. Yep. So there's a lot of them, and you can go through them actually from the Ethereum wiki, which is here. And oh, they've moved here actually. Oh, I suppose it's no longer on this page. So essentially, you can go through the standard JSON RPC documentation from Ethereum itself to understand more on what each of these endpoints does. Okay, so moving on for tokens. Tokens is for everything that is for all the different token standards that you may have seen for Ethereum, such as ERC20, ERC721, and coming soon, ERC1155. Okay, so you can get information such as ERC20 token total supply, your token account balance for a token contract address. So let's say you like to know your account balance for USDT. You can check it here. And of course, we have the historical token balance. Like I said, this would be useful if you were to want to know how much how much USDT balance you had in the past, or for any other token that you've had. Similarly here. And something cool also that we have is get token info by contract address. So this is the section that you will see on Etherscan for something like, let's say, Uni. And you would see under this section. It's still loading for some reason. Okay, so you would see under this profile summary. So you would see the name of the project, its social profiles. You can get that using an API endpoint too. all you need to do is specify the token contract address. Okay, so moving on to the gas tracker, something we're all very, very interested in these days. Gas has been very interesting lately. Okay, so these gas tracker endpoints will definitely help you. So one of the things that it can do is estimate your confirmation time. So let's say the current gas price is, let's have a look. Gas is good today. So let's say you see that the gas price is 46 Gwei, but you want to take a chance and send a 40 Gwei transaction. You can check with the endpoint to roughly estimate on how long it will take if you were to send a 40 Gwei transaction in terms of seconds. Okay, and next you can also use the gas oracle, which is essentially what you see here. So using the gas oracle, you'll be able to find out the current gas price and what you should be paying. So the good thing about our gas tracker is that we also include the base fee if you would like to know that and use it to calculate. You can actually use it to calculate your own transactions, because after EIP 1559, anything that you pay below the base fee will essentially not get confirmed. So this will be helpful for you to safely set a fee that will be confirmed by the network. And next we have daily average gas limit. That's how much gas, the daily average gas limit on the Ethereum network. This is helpful once again if you're doing analytics. And next we have how much of Ethereum gas you use every day on it, every day on the Ethereum network. So this is on a daily basis. So once again, it's focused on analytics. Next, the daily average gas price. So you can compare how much gas has risen in the past month, in the past year, in the past days. And that is for the gas tracker section. Finally, on stats, let's move over. Okay, stats. You can get the total supply of Ether, something that you might be interested now that we're burning Ether on a daily basis. And get the Ether last price, of course. So you can get how much one Ether costs in Bitcoin, in USD terms. Yeah, we only support those two at the moment. Next, get Ethereum node size. So this is how big or how much of storage space you would incur if you were to run an Ethereum node. It's useful if you want to run a node, and it's good to know too if on a historical basis how big the node size have been growing. Okay, next, for the get total nodes count. So this one, we measure how many nodes we are able to detect on the Ethereum network. So this will show you, I think we have a historical one. Oh, no, we don't. So this will show you how many nodes we have detected currently on the Ethereum network. And next, the get daily network transaction fee. So this is how much of fees we are paying to miners every day. And that amount is denoted in ETH. Next, get daily new address count. So this is how many new Ethereum addresses that are created per day. Once again, it's for analytics. You can use it to build up dashboards that you want to know on how big Ethereum is growing over the years. And network utilization is how it essentially compares the ratio of how much power the miners are able to provide and how much we are using. And that is denoted in decimals here, which you can convert to a percentage. Okay, next we have daily average network hash rate. So this is how much of hashing power we have on the Ethereum network. You can compare it on a daily basis to see how big, if it's growing, if it's declining. Daily transaction count, how many transactions are performed on the Ethereum blockchain every day. Network difficulty. And the Ether historical daily market cap. So this is how big the market cap is for Ether. Ether historical price, once again, how much Ethereum was today, a past, and so on. Okay, so that covers it for more or less the API endpoints section. So there's also some other cool sections that we have on the docs that you might find useful. So API Pro is some resources on what API Pro is. And of course, the endpoints that you would get if you were to subscribe to API Pro. Okay, so another key section in the docs is this miscellaneous tools and utilities. So these are some useful libraries that you can use to interact with the Etherscan APIs. This is completely built by the community, so they've been pretty awesome to build wrappers in each of your native languages, such as Python, Node.js, PHP, .NET. There's probably way more, but if you want to write one, or if you find one, actually, you can mention it and we can include it here. Okay, so plugins. There are some plugins built by certain teams that have allowed you to do things such as contract verification. So I think this was covered. I'm not sure if they used it in the previous session by Dave. So there are plugins such as Etherscan, Truffle Plugin Verify, which allows you to automate the process of verifying your contracts. So you won't have to go to the Etherscan website and key in all the parameters. These things help cover it for you. And finally, there is, we skipped the tutorial section. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so coming back to the tutorial section. So we've written some tutorials on how to get started with the Etherscan APIs and some cool ways in which you can use this. And one of them is using it with Google Sheets. So I'm sure we're all familiar with Google Sheets. We've used it. And the cool thing about it is you can use these APIs within Google Sheets itself. So we just published this article. Feel free to go through it at your own time. It essentially allows you to connect any one of these endpoints and have the result come out onto a Google Sheet. And another tutorial we've done also is on verifying your contracts. So this is using Postman if you prefer to do it that way. So essentially from Postman, we hope that you'll be able to understand it and implement it in your own way, in your own languages. Okay, so we've done the tools and utilities. Support. So support is just some frequently asked questions you might have, rate limits, some common error messages you might get when you use the APIs, bit of self-help articles here. And of course, if you need to reach out to us, we leave our contact details here too. Okay, so that is pretty much the going through the API docs of Etherscan. So before we close, I'd just like to highlight something very important here, is that you don't need to be a very, very technical developer, or you don't need to be very advanced with the APIs or in coding or coding in general too, if you like to use the APIs. You can simply integrate it into Google Sheets. So what we've recently explored is that using Google Sheets, you're able to integrate and do something like this. You're able to build dashboards that can auto-refresh every minute and essentially come up with whatever you can think of that you're able to build with the APIs. So something that I've done over the weekend is to build one of these gas trackers. It's essentially a complete recreation of this thing that refreshes every 1 minute. So it's very basic right now, but the idea of it is that using Google Sheets, it's simple enough for you to extend, to add your own details, and to even do more further calculations that Excel supports. So also not Excel, Google Sheets. So Google Sheets has stuff like currency conversion and all kinds of other things, all kinds of other plugins that you can build. There's a ref here. So sometimes the API query does limit you a little bit and you get ref, but it generally happens very, very seldom. Yep. Now it's refreshed, it's back to normal. Okay, so I think with that, we are wrapped with the introduction to Etherscan's APIs. Let me go back to the docs. Okay, so I'll go back to StreamYard. Does anyone have any questions that you would like to ask, or any kind of data that you're looking to obtain that we might have an encounter? Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you have any questions, feel free to post it in the comments, and we will pick it up and share it. If not, or while waiting to see if people have any questions, like my question for you, Nicholas, is what dashboard would you like to see someone do like either just as someone from Etherscan or just as a fellow user of Ethereum, what would be a dashboard that you would love to see if someone from the local community can help create?
It's a good question. So I think with now that we know what sort of raw data we can get from the endpoints, I think it'd be cool that if we can build things like an L2 monitoring system. So as we know that there is an endpoint such as getting ether balance, you could query the ether balance of the common L2 bridges, such as of Arbitrum, of Optimism, and you can find out what TVL they have and how big each of these chains are growing. So I think I've seen a community dashboard for that. So if you've done it, feel free to share it with us and we can feature it here. Another thing that would be cool would be to build some sort of like easy accounting system, I would say, where you can input your address and then you can find out what was your ether balance in the past and essentially how much of your how much of volume you've done across DeFi and so on. Yeah, I think that's the two I can think of. There's probably a lot more and we should probably give more thought into this.
All right.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Nicholas. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to ask in the ETL Telegram group later, and
Yep.
Nicholas and other Etherscan members can help answer as well.
Awesome.
Any parting comments? Oh, actually, okay, we do have one question here. Let me just show it.
Okay, let's have a look.
Asif asks, how can we do load testing on smart contracts deployed on Rinkaby? Any tools you suggest?
How do you define load testing actually? Because how well a smart contract performs is dependent on how congested the Ethereum network is, and Etherscan essentially does not process transactions. So we're not able to control how fast the Ethereum network works. So maybe as if you could clarify what you mean by load testing on smart contracts deployed on Rinkaby. If you'd like to clarify what you mean by load testing. Sending 1,000 transactions simultaneously. 1,000. Oh, right. I think what you mean is you're trying to send, let's say 100 API queries, is it, at one time? Generally, we have a rate limit. So going back to I think I stopped sharing, right, Harit? Let me share my screen once again.
Yes, we'll need you to turn back your stream.
Is it back?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we do have some rate limits so that you don't kill the Etherscan servers. So for the free tiers, you're allowed to do up to 5 calls per second. So the idea is that if you want to send, let's say, 1,000 API requests, you will need to throttle these so that you don't exceed the 5 calls per second. Or if you like to, you can, of course, upgrade your plan so that you get more calls and you can send more of it at any one time. Okay, so is that what you're referring to as if saying, let's say, 1,000 requests? Yes. So, of course, you can send 1,000 requests, but you would have to batch these out so that you do not send them all at once and overwhelm our rate limits. Great.
All right.
So is there any other questions from the floor?
Yeah. All right. So Asif, if that didn't 100% answer your question, I will shortly share a link to the ETL Telegram group where you can join and ask your question there, and perhaps we can have a bit more context explained.
All right. Great.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining, and there is another similar session tomorrow using BSC scan APIs, which Nicholas will be able to share. And yeah, you check the schedule for MBM for tomorrow, and join that session. I do see one question from Jay.
Right.
Can it batch request?
Can it batch requests? That depends on the endpoint. So for example, if you were to, let's say you were to use some endpoints such as accounts and you like to query the ether balance. Oh, sorry. Oh, I think I closed my screen once again. Let me just quickly flip it back on. Okay, we're back. So if you're using certain endpoints such as ether balance, you would have the option to send multiple addresses at once, and you can send them instead of performing 10 of these queries, you could specify a infinitely long list and use this endpoint to query them. But I think if you're referring to sending a lot, how many requests can you batch at once? Once again, it follows the rate limit of your plan. So if you are everyone starts on the free plan, so you'll be able to send 5 calls per second and up to 100,000 calls to these endpoints every day. I hope that's what you're referring to, Jay.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so if nothing else, let me very quickly share the Telegram link. Nicholas, do you have any final comments or things to share?
Yeah, I think if you guys have any questions, like feel free to drop it in the ETCAL group. We're all there, so if you have further questions. Jay Wong, when you say means batch also limited, yes. So let's say in your batch it contains 5 requests. That is the limit for a plan. So, but the good thing is you can have up to 3 keys. So each of these keys is allowed a 5 call per second limit. So you can find your way to optimize your queries to the best way.
All right. Yeah. I am conscious of time.
All right.
So I've put in the Telegram group link in the YouTube chat. So if you are on YouTube, just feel free to click on that link to share. Thanks a lot, Nicholas, for joining us. And
Right.
again, for everybody, please make sure to join tomorrow if you're interested in exploring the BSC scan APIs as well.
Yes.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.